Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are tackling a supremely complex and deeply sensitive topic.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff.
It really is. We're focusing on the investigation involving Daystar Network personality Josh Brown. Now, anyone following the initial public reports knows the internal details emerging are, well, shocking. But public shock is one thing. Hard evidence, something you can actually build a case on, that's another.
Precisely. And we recognize the gravity here. So our mission today is really to dig into it properly, right? Cut through the speculation. We're zeroing in on the specifics, the actual detailed eyewitness testimony and the documentary evidence, the things that served as the catalyst, you know?
What took it from just sort of private worry among relatives?
Exactly, to becoming the basis for a real police inquiry. We need to understand how these claims were actually substantiated piece by piece.
So we're not just wading into general accusations, we're dissecting the trail itself. What are the core materials giving us this insight? What are we actually working with here?
All right, so we basically have three interlocking layers of evidence. And together, they're what ultimately gave these claims their weight for investigators.
Right.
First, you've got the incredibly difficult, really painful firsthand accounts from the immediate inner circle, JW and Rebecca Lambweiss. They were there, they saw things.
Present for the key moments.
Key moments, yes. Second, there's crucial independent testimony from Sylvia, who worked in the household. She offers a different perspective, someone without that family connection.
Neutral observer.
Pretty much. And finally, maybe the most critical piece for the legal side of things is this rediscovered written document, a record from the time that acts as a kind of anchor.
Okay.
So our goal is to pull out from these accounts the pattern of alleged behavior, specifically towards the young girl known as Baby Lamb.
Okay, let's unpack this. We need to get the timeline straight. Yeah. Starting with those moments that first set off alarm bells. Where did that sort of vague unease start turning into real fear for JW and Rebecca?
Well, according to the sources, the initial flags went up in a place you might not expect.
Where was that?
The Daystar TV Network green room. You know, polished, professional, supposed to be highly controlled.
Kind of a weird place for it, right? Seems contradictory.
It really does.
Oh,
It's almost the perfect camouflage, isn't it? A place with high expectations, everyone's on brand, supposedly under scrutiny. Yet JW describes the sort of polished surface. Well, it didn't hide what felt deeply unsettling underneath.
He talks about two incidents there, doesn't he? Moments he said were just instantly burned into his memory.
That's right. The first time he walked into the room and he just immediately felt the whole vibe shift.
How did he describe it?
He used the phrase unnervingly wrong, like an instinct kicking in, telling him something was seriously out of step with how things should be in that environment.
And what was actually happening?
This is where we have to focus on the nonverbal stuff, because it wasn't like obvious abuse, it was subtle. JW was watching an interaction between Josh Brown and Baby Lamb. He said there was an intense proximity.
Meaning too close.
Way too close. A physical closeness that just felt off, more than normal casual affection. And the energy between them, he felt, was highly inappropriate for, you know, a prominent adult relative and a young child.
But it was the child's reaction that really cemented it for him.
Exactly. That's what made him think, okay, this isn't right. The sources say Baby Lamb physically stiffened.
Stiffened.
Yeah. Not relaxed, not playing along or seeming happy with the contact. Her whole small frame just tensed up, recoiled almost, maybe subtly, but he saw it.
That tension. Wow.
It's a huge psychological marker, right? When a kid's body language goes from comfortable to rigid around an adult, that's a massive silent signal. Something's wrong.
So JW didn't see it as just a hug.
No, not at all. He immediately read it as a charged interaction, a moment heavy with something inappropriate. He called it a silent alarm bell ringing in his mind that he could not unhear.
You want to dismiss that kind of feeling, maybe.
Yeah.
Tell yourself you're imagining it.
Of course, especially in that kind of family, that kind of setting. But he said his gut, his body, just wouldn't let him ignore it.
And then it happened again. That's what really locked in the fear.
Yes. The repetition was key. The source material confirms a second separate incident later. Same place, same green room.
Compounding the worry.
The isolated data point became a pattern, you see. In that second instance, he said the social dynamic was off-kilter again.
And the child.
Again, visibly uncomfortable. Her body language suggested distress, like she couldn't or didn't want to say anything about it there.
So for JW, seeing this repeat, in that specific sort of semi-private but high-stakes place.
It suggested a troubling comfort level from Brown, like he was intentionally pushing boundaries right there where things were supposed to be professional. Intentional breaches of appropriate adult-child boundaries was the phrase used to describe JW's view.
So his first real alarm wasn't some big dramatic event, but this buildup of subtle, really chilling feelings, an intuition about a pattern that just felt wrong.
Right. And that process, seeing it happen more than once in a professional setting, it forced him to question his own desire to just, see the best in a family member.
Which is hard to do.
Extremely hard. When you're invested in a community, a family, a reputation, you subconsciously try to explain away discomfort, find innocent explanations. But when the pattern repeats, and crucially, when the child's body keeps sending those distress signals, the rationalizations just crumble.
So the green room incidents became the starting point, the genesis of his conviction that something was seriously wrong.
Exactly.
Okay, but abstract family fears, even strong intuitions, they can often be dismissed, especially by institutions or authorities.
True. It's easy to label it as internal drama.
So the investigation needs something more. Outside validation, maybe. That brings us to Section 2, which sounds critical. The corroboration from an independent witness. Sylvia, the household worker.
Sylvia's testimony is, extraordinarily significant because she offers what investigators call a ground-level neutral perspective, meaning she wasn't tangled up in the family politics, the money, the network, the religious expectations. Her job was just her job, so she could observe things without the same emotional filter or, frankly, the financial stake that might have influenced how others saw things.
Like JW and Rebecca, even if unintentionally.
Right. Her perspective is cleaner in investigative terms.
And her observation directly challenged the official family story about a key event, didn't it? The 2021 beach trip incident.
It did. This is where the narrative they'd constructed starts to fall apart.
What was the official story?
The family had put out this sort of benign explanation, probably designed to make it all seem innocent. The story was that Brown followed baby Lamb upstairs because another child had supposedly invited him up. Makes it sound like a group thing, harmless.
The story of convenience.
Precisely. But Sylvia, who was actually there, supervising, she gave a very firm first-hand correction.
Okay, what did she say she actually saw, and why was it so damaging to their story?
She stated, quite unequivocally, the sources say, that the official story was simply not true, flat out wrong.
Wow.
She witnessed the young girl being told by an adult told to go upstairs alone to change her clothes, a normal, solitary task.
Right.
And Sylvia says that Brown deliberately followed her at that exact moment, right on her heels up the stairs. He wasn't part of some group going up. He acted alone, singling out that moment when she was alone and heading to a private space.
That distinction, it changes everything, doesn't it?
Completely.
If another kid invites him, okay, maybe it's spontaneous, maybe innocent social stuff. But if he deliberately follows her, right when she's sent off alone for a private task.
It shifts the motive from potentially accidental or social to intentional and targeted.
And that's what the sources pull out as the key thing here.
Yes. This recalibration of a single event's motive, as the analysis puts it, it takes what could be brushed off as ambiguous and turns it into a deliberate, targeted act with undeniably troubling implications.
For investigators, that move from accidental to deliberate must be huge.
Immense. It's central to establishing a pattern of predatory behavior rather than just, awkwardness or misinterpretation.
And Sylvia's input didn't stop there. She had another observation.
Correct. She also shared something previously unreported involving an interaction in a pool.
Okay, what happened there?
She described seeing Josh Brown in the pool, engaging in what she called repeated and overly familiar physical affection toward the girl.
Overly familiar?
Yeah. And what gives this weight is that she specifically noted it was unusual enough that it really stood out to her professional eye. It seemed excessive even for a relative, let alone a family friend like Brown.
So it wasn't like she was looking for problems, but this just caught her attention as wrong.
Exactly. It forced itself into her awareness because it seemed off.
And the sources mentioned her reaction to it.
They emphasized that this pool behavior made her so uncomfortable personally that the image was etched vividly in her memory.
That detail, a neutral outside person having this visceral, lasting memory, this powerful corroboration, isn't it?
It absolutely is. This account powerfully corroborates the fears JW and Rebecca were already grappling with.
Why is her account so strong?
Because it comes from a neutral household worker, someone with no obvious axe to grind, no financial stake in the Daystar Network's success or failure. It's very hard for defenders to just dismiss that kind of testimony.
Right.
It gives significant investigative weight to the pattern JW and Rebecca were trying so desperately to get others to see. Sylvia's perspective was like the outside world confirming, you are not crazy, this is real.
Okay. So we have the initial subtle alarms in the green room. Then independent validation from a third party, Sylvia, confirming a targeted act around the beach trip, plus this questionable familiarity she saw at the pool. All this evidence was building up, and it led to the final, really crucial incident, the one that apparently turned all that worry into just terrifying, actionable certainty for JW.
Yes, let's move to Section 3, the bedroom encounter.
This feels like a turning point.
It absolutely is. It's described as the narrative climax in the source material, and the setting shifts dramatically.
From public or semi-public spaces.
Right. The green room, the pool area. Now we move into the deeply intimate, private space of a bedroom, and that context alone just instantly raises the stakes, the severity of anything observed there.
So what did JW recount?
He talks about entering a room unexpectedly, didn't knock, just walked in.
Catching them off guard.
Exactly, giving him this snapshot of an unguarded, unscripted moment. And what he saw was Josh Brown and baby Lamb together, alone, on a bed.
Okay. Now, the sources acknowledge that just seeing two people on a bed could maybe be interpreted innocently in some context, right?
Hypothetically, yes, a defense could try. But what happened next instantly blew any ambiguity out of the water for JW. It wasn't just the scene itself, it was the reaction to being interrupted.
What was the reaction?
Immediate and shared. Both Brown and the child were simultaneously and visibly startled.
Startled how?
They jolted. The sources use that word, jolted, as if caught in an intensely private, secret moment. It wasn't just surprise, it was alarm. A shared, instantaneous alarm, like a boundary, had been profoundly violated by his entry.
That shared jolt. That unguarded flash of alarm on both their faces.
That's what JW says sealed the horror for him. In that single, frozen second, any little bit of him still wanting to give Brown the charitable benefit of the doubt, it just evaporated instantly.
Doubt needs room for interpretation, right?
Exactly. But that kind of physical, guilty reaction to being discovered, it felt unambiguous to him.
I can only imagine that feeling. Your blood running cold. That 1 second of shared panic just strips away any plausible deniability. The unspoken communication of their bodies, the compromising setting a closed bedroom, the age difference, and that guilty reaction. JW's conclusion was clear then.
According to the sources, yes. Definitive. He concluded the situation was either a gross violation of boundaries, so huge it couldn't be explained away, or it pointed towards something far darker and more predatory.
And this specific encounter became the core piece for them.
The sources make it really clear. This bedroom incident became the central, pivotal piece of evidence in JW and Rebecca's own minds. It took all that abstract, nagging worry and crystallized it into something terrifyingly concrete. Certainty that demanded action.
The point of no return.
The ambiguity was gone. The ability to pretend maybe it was okay, maybe they were misreading things, that was gone forever after that moment.
And reaching that terrifying certainty must have put them on a direct collision course. Not just with Josh Brown, but with the whole family structure, the whole network they were part of.
Absolutely. Which brings us to the next section and maybe the most psychologically damaging part of this. The corrosive culture of silence and the immense family pressure.
How did that play out?
Well, the buildup of observations, capped by that shocking certainty from the bedroom, it led JW and Rebecca to a really heartbreaking place, a profound and heartbreaking loss of confidence.
Not just in Brown anymore.
No. Devastatingly, they lost faith in the child's own parents, Jonathan and Susie Lamb.
Wow. That's a huge crisis of trust within a family like that. Deeply interconnected.
It's monumental. They were essentially forced into this incredibly painful position of questioning if the parents were putting the family's reputation and maybe the financial health of the multi-million-dollar Daystar Network empire ahead of their own child's immediate safety.
That suggests deep systemic issues, doesn't it?
It points directly to deep systemic family strain. Yeah. where the institution, the network, the image comes before the individual. The sources paint a picture of intense pressure, maybe unspoken, maybe not, to circle the wagons.
Protect the brand.
Protect the brand, protect the family name, protect the public image. The stakes are astronomical, right? This isn't just any family. It's tied to a global, faith-based media entity built entirely on this perception of moral integrity.
And the sources suggest Brown himself played a role in enforcing that silence.
They claim he skillfully exploited that system, that he actively worked to create division and fear.
How so?
There are specific claims he fostered this with us or against us mentality among the relatives.
Making it hard to speak up.
Exactly, making it incredibly difficult socially and emotionally for anyone, especially JW and Rebecca, to voice dissent without risking being totally cut off, alienated. It creates this culture where concerns get minimized, rationalized away. If you raise an issue, you're not just questioning a person, you're seen as threatening the whole empire.
But this is a family deeply rooted in faith. Wouldn't forgiveness be central? How did they navigate that? How did JW and Rebecca square grace with the need for protection and accountability?
That's the really tricky part the sources highlight. The pressure wasn't just vague or implied. It was apparently delivered directly, using the language of their faith community, by the child's own father, Jonathan Lamb.
What did he say?
JW recounts this pivotal conversation where Jonathan told him directly that he had already forgiven Josh Brown for whatever happened, and that he wanted the whole family to just move forward from the issue.
Coming from the child's father. That's an incredibly powerful statement. Forgiveness and moving on.
Extremely powerful. But how did JW and Rebecca take it?
How do they interpret that?
They didn't see it as genuine spiritual maturity or, redemptive grace in that context. They saw it as a clear, strong, direct signal from the institution, via the father, to drop the matter entirely.
Let it go.
Let it go. And crucially, stop rocking the boat. In their view, the person who should have been the child's fiercest defender was using the language of religious reconciliation as a way to demand organizational silence.
Like a mechanism of control disguised as virtue.
That's precisely how it's framed.
The psychological pressure of that.
Yeah.
It must have been immense. That mix of family loyalty, institutional power, financial ties, and spiritual language, all pushing them to doubt what they saw.
Absolutely. The sources explicitly say this pressure made them constantly question themselves. Were they overreacting? Was it really not as serious as their own eyes and gut feelings were telling them it was?
That's how these environments work, isn't it? They make you doubt your own reality.
Yes. This process where the system tells you your objective reality is wrong, that's how intense pressure systematically dismantles a person's confidence in their own eyes and their own conscience. They were caught in this awful struggle, trying to hold on to their conviction against this massive weight.
Caught between their conscience telling them something was terribly wrong and the whole system demanding they ignore it. The evidence was there, but the structure was designed to shut them down. So what broke the deadlock? It sounds like it was only rediscovering a key piece of physical evidence that finally gave them the solid ground they needed to push back forcefully and cooperate fully with the police.
Exactly. That leads us to Section 5, the Anchor of Truth, the 2021 document.
This document sounds like the real linchpin.
It fundamentally shifted things for them, and likely for the investigation, too. The sources say the couple went from giving kind of tentative police interviews, still maybe wrestling with that self-doubt, to giving fully assertive, detailed testimony. And it was precisely because they found this physical record from their own past.
So it wasn't just remembering they felt uneasy back then, it was actual proof of that unease.
Right. Not a vague memory that could be dismissed as, looking back with bias after things blew up. It was tangible, physical. What was it exactly?
It was a detailed, heartfelt letter that JW had meticulously written back in 2021.
Wow.
Described as a stark, contemporaneous chronicle of unease. Reading his own words from years before, apparently, was this profound validation for him. An objective account written before the consequences of reporting were fully known. And what made the content so powerful was it specific.
Highly specific, not just I felt weird. It detailed a precise timeline, every odd moment, every lingering glance he'd noticed, the specific behaviors, including those green room incidents that had struck him as fundamentally wrong at the time he wrote it.
It acted like a memory aid.
Exactly, like a memory prosthesis, the analysis suggests. It brought back the sharp details, the specific context of events that time, and maybe that institutional pressure had started to blur or soften.
That's huge, evidentially speaking. Time messes with memory, lets doubt creep in, but this letter brought it all back with brutal, undeniable clarity.
And that's the legal significance, right? This document proved their current alarm wasn't some recent invention, not a story they cooked up after a scandal broke.
Right.
It proved their concern was the result of a years-long process of observation and gut-wrenching worry. It showed the pattern they saw wasn't hindsight, it was documented in real time.
It basically demolishes common defense arguments, doesn't it?
Pretty much. It wasn't just a scribbled note, it was described as a methodical, timely, and disciplined accounting. Dates, locations, context, specific behaviors. When a witness can produce a contemporary written record like that, it makes it really hard for the other side to argue they've misremembered or that they have some recent motive to lie. It proves the alarm was a real-time, visceral reaction.
And the impact on the actual police investigation.
The letter, once they handed it over, became the key piece of evidence in reopening and seriously substantiating the inquiry.
Why reopening? Had it stalled?
The implication is that perhaps the initial reports lacked this kind of concrete, contemporaneous backing. This letter provided a verifiable paper trail that existed before any public scandal, any media frenzy, any formal charges. That gives it immense credibility.
It backs up everything else they testify to.
Exactly. It shifted the investigation's foundation, moving it from potentially subjective memory onto the bedrock of documented fact from the past.
In a case like this, which so often gets bogged down in he said, she said conflicting stories, this written record is just a solid, tangible anchor point, a piece of the past forcing its way into the present, demanding to be heard. It's really an incredible example of how personal record-keeping, that discipline, can end up serving justice down the line.
It fundamentally changes the power dynamic. It moves the case away from just memory versus memory towards consistent concern that was demonstrably present long before any external pressure or motivation existed.
So what does this all mean? When we pull back and look at the whole picture, we've traced this really powerful, painful narrative arc.
Yeah.
It started with those subtle feelings of discomfort, didn't it?
Yeah.
Twice in the green room, that initial silent alarm.
Subtle but persistent.
Then that discomfort escalated.
Yeah.
Targeted actions, questionable familiarity backed up by Sylvia, the independent witness.
The external corroboration.
Which then culminated in that moment of just concrete, awful certainty in the bedroom encounter. That shared jolt that just erased all doubt for JW.
The point of no return.
And all of this played out against this backdrop of intense, systemic family pressure to stay quiet, to explain it away, to put the reputation first.
Right, the system pushing back hard.
The big insight here, drawing from the sources, seems to be about the critical, maybe even life-saving role of timely, private documentation, especially when you're up against a powerful system trying to dismiss or bury your concerns.
It really is fascinating how the sheer cumulative weight of the evidence, but especially that written record from 2021, was apparently necessary to finally break through, to overcome those strong institutional and family barriers that were actively working to minimize everything.
The Daystar Network, its whole brand, is built on public trust and integrity. This evidence really suggests that sometimes the only way through a system designed to protect itself is that disciplined, timely proof. A single letter, written years ago, proved stronger than all the unspoken fear.
It gave their intuition an anchor.
So for you, the listener, this deep dive really highlights how incredibly difficult it is to hold on to your own conviction, your own reality, when powerful forces, family, institutions, communities are telling you you're wrong.
Yeah, that pressure to doubt yourself is immense.
Yeah.
So maybe the provocative thought here is about the power of simply writing things down, your observations, your feelings in the moment, even things that seem small, maybe easy to dismiss at the time. How does that seemingly small act of personal record-keeping potentially shift the balance of power, maybe years later, towards truth and accountability? What are the private observations in your own life that maybe need anchoring today?